to be able to provide a go-to place for the players. I always felt that when I work with them, sometimes I'm repeating myself all the time. And I thought, well, do you know what? Once I'm no longer with them, what have they got to go to? So for me, I want to create something that can act as a support, something that can educate them, and something that could expand their awareness away from the physical.
Okay, and then how about coaches, though? Because that's kind of a different perspective.
Yes, well, this it's quite similar, actually, because with the coaches, I want them to... Yeah, so for the coaches to be more mindful about how they coach. So, for example, taking into account the player's upbringing, where they grew up, their culture, what the player brings to the arena, but also what the coach brings to the arena that also brings out something different within the player. You know, so it's just looking at the bigger picture. So when people say to me, who's this book for? I find it so difficult because I don't want to put it in a box, and it's for everyone who has an interest in football, because I've just covered obviously the player and the coach. You've got the parent. You've got parents who've got their young kids who they ferry to football clubs every day or nearly every day, and they don't know how to support their child. What they do is they provide support by dropping them there and watching the game, but they don't know what to look out for, and they put a lot of trust in football clubs. And I always say this, is that with clubs and with the coaches, they don't have the best interest of the players at heart. And it's not a bad thing. I think the people that work at the clubs are really nice people, and sometimes they go out of their way to support players. But at the same time, they're employed by the club, and I feel that sometimes parents don't understand the system of football, and they kind of they put a lot of trust in the coaches, thinking, okay, they'll do best by my child, not knowing that, unfortunately, they have to prioritize the club, and it is a business. So it's just putting things out there and kind of saying, look, this is the situation. This is what happens within football. Here's some ideas of how you can, support yourself or get better educated, and don't just listen to me. Here's some things from outside of football. Here's the stories of footballers from before and players that are in the game now and the next generation. It was interesting because I've been working in education for the last 13 years. When I left football, I set up a company in schools. And that was a massive learning curve for me, because I went in and I could build rapport with the kids. And teachers would tell me, this child doesn't learn, this child misbehaves. And I was thinking, wait a minute, they're fine with me. And once I got past the stage of my ego getting in the way, thinking, I'm the man, I started to think about, well, what is it that allows me to connect with these kids? Now, once I get past the barriers, or sometimes it's just, I'm a man, and predominantly it's women in the environment. I look at things like, okay, I respect the kids, so they respect me back. Now, it sounds simple, but what it allows is, if there's no barrier there and they feel comfortable with me, and they feel comfortable with being vulnerable with me, then what that does now is it opens them up to find out where their starting line is. So they can establish, okay, this is where I am, this is where I want to be, and they'll listen to me to help me guide them to the finish line. So if a teacher, that's what their job is. But if they've got that resistance and they're not going to open up to you, then it's going to be so difficult to guide them, because they don't want to be guided by someone they don't really like, they don't really connect with. So going back to football, while I was in education and while I'm still there, I'm like, oh my God, this happens in football. And I started to look at all these elements that play out in football. Now, because football was something that was it's not taken seriously, even though everyone loves it, we kind of let things happen in football that we would never allow anywhere else. And so a strong undercurrent that flows through this book is saying, well, hold on a minute. There's a lot of things that are going on that we should improve on for the well-being of the footballer, but also, if we want to improve it, so if I'm like a chief executive of a football club, I'm like, well, hold on a minute, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? And I could use this as a guide to now assess who I bring in, and not just because this coach has, been at 10 clubs. He's been at 10 clubs, but he's been sacked by 10 clubs. How do I assess whether he's going to be able to bring the best out of my group? And to summarize it, I would say, is we need to be more mindful. And I think that's the whole message in this book, to say there's more to the game. There's more to the player. There's more to the coach. There's more to your roles. I didn't put this chapter in. I had to take it out, but I had a chapter with the difference that makes a difference. And to be fair, this book kind of touches, every chapter is the difference that makes a difference. But in terms of why we have great footballers, no one knows. Years ago, I said to Gareth Southgate, when he had his role with the under-21s, on Twitter, I tweeted him and he tweeted back. I said, what made Brazilian Ronaldo the greatest striker? And he said he had skills, he could finish, he had pace, he had strength. But when you look at those attributes, and now he's the England manager, and this is nothing against Southgate,
Yeah.
Those attributes alone are shared amongst thousands of footballers, but all those thousands could never touch Brazilian Ronaldo. So there are things that we miss. Now, me personally, when I look back on his videos, because that's all I have to go on, I loved when I would watch him do a sprint. He would have the perfect sprinters action. I've got a picture, a still of him and Usain Bolt, exactly the same. But when he was in a busy environment, what I noticed that changed was that he altered his running pattern. And when he altered his running pattern, it was almost like, what do you call it on the sewing machine? Is it a foot or a footer? You know, when it moves rapid. And why that made a difference is because when he changed his running pattern, his foot was never, I would say, never further than 10 centimeters away from the ball. So that means even if you twitched in his direction, he could move the ball in the other direction. And I just think to myself, look, these are the differences that make the difference. What I want it to be is an embodied experience. I want us to look at the whole when it comes to football. I want us to, yes, be aware of the psychological aspects, not just from a well-being perspective, but also from a skill and an intelligence perspective. I want us to be in touch with our heart and how that also links with our head, our mind, but also just an embodied experience. You know, a player can walk onto a pitch and just feel, you know, and for example, a player could go out and see a scenario play out whereby he's on a team in training. And just by being in that team and feeling that situation out, he will think, do you know what? I'm not starting today, because he's recalling all the other past bad situations that have happened. Now, insert my negative state, that affects my body language. Manager judges me. That reinforces what I thought. And then so on and so on. So I want it to be more open. It's going to be an embodied. I want this book to show that actually football's an embodied experience and we must look at the whole.